What things are you ashamed of about yourself, and what does your shadow self look like? Now, I didn't do any research into what a shadow self is, but I assume that what it is the way that you are, feel, and think when you're kind of at your low point. You're like self destructive pattern area of your life. So, this is a really difficult question. This is a really difficult question, and I almost wanted to skip it because it is hard, and because I also feel like maybe you're tired of hearing me complain about myself. But I think it is a bit important because it's going to keep me humble because it's going to just remind me of the parts of myself maybe that need some work, or maybe the parts that aren't so healthy, because lately I've been feeling really healthy. So, not that that's a bad thing, but I think, it's good to keep you on a level playing field, to remind yourself of the areas that maybe are a little bit more difficult. So, I've made a list so that I don't ramble too much, and it's a reasonably sized list. We'll see if we get through it all. But anyway, on to the list. So, my shadow self, the me that when I'm not doing well, this is what goes on. So, number one, self doubt and questioning. So, self doubt creeps in a lot of areas, and it makes me question everything I'm doing. It makes me question my motivation for doing things, and whether or not it's something worthwhile, whether or not it's something that's selfish. Is it something that I need to continue doing? Is it something that's pleasing to God? Am I being fleshly? Is it prideful? Those kinds of things. So, no matter what it is that I'm doing, for example, I went to the gym this morning to my PIO class. I'm back to PIO, and PIO for me is very beneficial. It gives me muscle strength, which is going to help my bone mass, because as a small person with a digestive disease, I am very prone to osteoporosis and those bone diseases that old ladies get. So, for me to build muscle mass and flexibility is going to help with that. So, and also I like being strong. I do a lot of physical work around my home, and I like being strong, and it helps with my mental health. But I question my motivation for going. Even though it is something that's good for me, I am spending money on these classes that I could spend other places, paying off debt, buying things for my children, buying other stuff. I have to spend money on these classes. I have to take time, get up early in the morning for it, which means that I have to go to bed early, so I'm taking time away from my family. And even though I know that it's not a selfish act for me to have something that I go and do that brings me joy, I have this questioning. Am I doing this exercise because I'm vain and I'm terribly concerned about my body? That's where the questioning of a motivation, where I can't just say like exercise is good. PIO makes me feel balanced mentally and helps with my mental health. I can't just leave it there. I have to go into like, is this selfish? Is it vain? Is it this? Is it this? So that's an example of self-doubt and questioning on something that is relatively good. Number two, desire to connect with people, but delaying or avoiding. So I remember last night I was thinking about this, and when I was a little girl, I watched the movie Little Mermaid, and I could so connect with her when she talked about, she sang that song, I want to be where the people are. And that was a quote that I used in, I think, my last video. I want to be where the people are. I want to see them dancing. I want to be with them. I want to be part of their world. But I always felt like, and feel like a lot of times, that I'm not a part of that world, that I'm always just, like she was in the movie, just outside looking in. I'm never really part of that. I want to be where the people are. And some of that is of my own making, because I have a desire to connect with people, but then I delay it or avoid it out of fear that they won't accept me, fear that they're going to look at me or hear me speak and then reject me. So I've already decided that that's going to happen. So I just don't engage with people. I might throw in a couple things here and there, but then, when they come back and then maybe desire my presence, and I go running. So, you have this draw to the people, but then you don't want them to try to draw you too much, because I don't know why. That's just what happens. I just run away. The same thing when I've been now attending church 2 weeks in a row, and after it's over, when everybody wants to visit, I just run out because I'm nervous to make that connection, or I'm avoiding getting involved with a community, even though that's why I'm there. Number 3, fear of discovery. Now, this one is more, I'm afraid, I don't even know if the word's afraid. I have anxiety over people actually figuring out who I really am, what I'm really like, what I think about, that sort of thing, because you don't want to, once again, as I was as a teenager, be labeled as some kind of weirdo. So then I end up, just flat out avoiding social situations because I don't want to be discovered. I don't want someone to figure me out. I don't want people to need me. But then at the same time, I do like feeling needed. I like feeling important. But I don't want people to discover me. When I switched jobs and I now work for myself, it took me until, just this last few months, and it's been 2 years now, this last few months, to actually put my last name on my business cards. Because I didn't want people to find me. Because there's this fear of, I don't know what's going to happen if they find me and they know my last name. They know my last name. I live in a small town. It's just so silly. Number 4 is worthlessness. Now, this part has gotten much, much better for me in the past year. But I can say, my life experience has been that I felt worthless a lot of the time. I felt like I was never good enough. And good enough for who? I'm not sure. But probably good enough for myself, because what I was doing wasn't enough. I wasn't loving my husband enough. I wasn't, connecting with my children enough. My house isn't clean enough. I wasn't working hard enough at work. I could have done more hair and brought in more clients and made more money and, all of these things. And I felt like all the things that I was doing in my life, little or big, were kind of a worthless waste, that I never accomplished anything. That's how I felt. That isn't the truth, but that's something that I walked around with. So then why even try to connect with people and make friends? Because you're just a waste. There isn't anything that you could offer them, because you're just this, confused, convoluted person that can't straighten anything out. And when you do say stuff, it's so bizarre that no one gets it. So it was always just this kind of feeling of worthlessness and never being good enough and needing to work harder to prove myself to myself and possibly to other people. But there was less worry about that and more worry about, being good enough for me. Number 5, unable to identify emotion or express in a tangible way. I'm getting better at this, separating my feelings from someone else's, but I have difficulty a lot of times expressing how I'm feeling to other people, and specifically for other people. I can write it very well, but I really would rather be able to just tell them or show them. My preferred method is to probably make a gift for somebody or give them some of my eggs from my chickens and run away. I don't want their reaction. I don't want their thank you. I just want to show love to them without attention back. You know, like I'm almost afraid of their reaction and how they will respond. And I don't want that. Well, I want them to love me back, but I don't want to have to receive it, I guess. That goes back to that worthlessness because you feel like you're not worthy of love. Never satisfied. Number 6, never satisfied with the work I do. Perfectionism. My house is never clean enough. My yard isn't pretty enough. My, what I'm doing with everything isn't enough. There's always this perfectionism of, if it doesn't look this way, it wasn't worth doing. And I haven't arrived if I don't have it perfectly as my mind sees it. Someone else might come in and say, oh my goodness, it's so beautiful. What you're doing is so awesome. But because I see all the little things, the little flaws in it, it's still not enough. So I always have to do more work to try to prove to myself, once again, that what I'm doing is enough and what I'm doing is the right thing. I'm irritated. Number 7, I'm irritated by my physical body, and I think this is a common thing for us. Eating is something that a lot of times can be irritating because you have to remember to do it. You got to eat the right things. You got to take care of this fleshly carcass, I guess. And my body has malfunctions, as everybody's does. I have, a digestive disease, and, I have pain, and it just irritates me because I don't want to wake up every day and have like, oh, my belly hurts. Oh, my back hurts. So I spent a lot of years hating my body. I'm not hating the look of it necessarily, but just hating the way it was put together, which is kind of insulting to my creator, I think, because, he made me this way. And but yeah, I've learned to accept some things with my body and like it a little bit better, but I still am irritated by it most of the time. I don't hate it in the way that I did maybe in my early 20s, but that's maybe some age you start to accept. Number 8, knowing what to say or do, but instead running it over and over in my head. Rehearsal, no performance. This goes back to unable to express my feelings for someone in a tangible way. I run over and over in my head what I want to say to someone to express my appreciation for them, my love for them, my thankfulness for what they've done or who they are. And I can't always say it. I rehearse it, I practice in my head, but then when it comes to that moment, I can't do it. And I made a video forever ago about that particular thing. And it frustrates me because I have inside just this, beautiful explanation of love for this person and how much I am grateful for them. And then when it comes to it, I just can't get it out of my mouth, And then the last thing, I think we're on number 9 here, is guilt-ruled decisions. I'm also getting better at this, mostly because my husband kind of calls me out on it, but my life has been ruled by guilt. I've made a lot of decisions based on guilt rather than logic, and rather than, thinking, because I know that what the right response is, but I don't want ever to make someone else feel bad. So if I'm going to feel guilty with my decision, then I'll change my decision a lot of times based on that guilt. Not based on necessarily what is right for me, but what is right for them. Because I want to keep harmony and keep people feeling good, whether or not I feel good about it, you know. So that's my list today. Yeah, what does your shadow self look like? What are the things that bother you about yourself? And when you're in that, bad place, what are the things that really kind of get to you and bother you about who you are? And that's all for today. Another beautiful day. Live in love out of the way you were created.